It's been an amazing summer of sport for the UK, with London hosting both the Olympic and Paralympic Games. But this comes at a time when the UK economy is struggling to post any sort of substantial growth. Now, on Friday, NIESR posted their monthly GDP estimates, which suggested the UK economy grew slightly for the 3 months through to August. So, in cold economic terms, was the £9 billion the UK spent on hosting the Games money well spent?
We need to bear in mind that a large part of the £9 billion spent was on infrastructure which will still be in existence beyond the end of the Olympic and Paralympic Games and will be there for the use of residents of London for the UK going forward. In terms of the economic impact now, then the one thing we know for certainty is that there's a £400 million boost to the UK economy in August as a consequence of how the Office for National Statistics accounts for the treatment of sales of tickets for the Games. Beyond that, it's very uncertain as to actually what the impact of the Olympic Games now has been, be it positive or negative.
One of the more amusing moments of the Paralympics was a whole stadium of people booing George Osborne. He's obviously a very easy target because he's implementing all this austerity, but is there any room for him to loosen his austerity?
I think there is some room to loosen, certainly when we talk about infrastructure spending, so spending on roads, railways, broadband, for example. We think that if he were to increase spending on infrastructure by around about 1% of GDP, this would boost the UK economy by at least 0.7%.
But isn't there a lot to be said by the way he's handled the situation, because the yield that the UK government's spending on its bonds is very low, and that's partly because of its tough austerity. So there are benefits of showing the markets that the government is serious about reducing costs.
The yield on UK government bonds is very low because the UK economy is very weak. If we look at what's happened to UK equity markets, they've tracked what's happened to the yield curve broadly in line. It's not what you'd expect. If the UK economy was doing well, we'd expect the equity market to be booming, and it clearly is not the case. So it's more a sign of economic weakness rather than economic strength. In actual fact, when the UK economy does return to reasonably robust rates of growth, we will see that yield curve begin to rise because markets will expect the Bank of England to be increasing interest rates, and that will be a sign of UK economic strength.
We saw a very small uptick in the UK GDP numbers, which you released on Friday. What was the breakdown of those numbers?
The Office for National Statistics do not take account of additional bank holidays, so I'm thinking of the additional bank holiday for the Queen's Jubilee celebrations in August. You would expect the UK economy to rebound in July as a consequence of this, so there's, to a large extent, the numbers we've seen for July and August have been flattered by this rebound. Now, nevertheless, there is some modest UK economic growth appearing, but it is very, very weak. We're talking about growth rates of 0.6%, 0.7% per quarter, and then we can begin to talk about a UK economic recovery. Even with this rebound from the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, we've got growth rates of around 0.3%, 0.2%.
But isn't it the case that there's only so much the UK government can do, because the UK economy is so closely tied to Europe that if the Europe and Eurozone doesn't sort out their problems, then there's going to be no concerted recovery here?
The UK economy is dependent on the performance of the euro area economy. We are intertwined with them, so recovery in the euro area will to a large extent lead to recovery in the UK economy. Now, that's not to say that the government can't do something about the lack of demand in the UK economy at the moment, and boosts to infrastructure expenditure are just one example of what the UK government can do to try and improve the UK's economic position in the near term.
But building roads isn't going to solve fundamental problems in the UK economy, is it? Is there other measures that the government can take to try and boost the economy?
The government has begun to address the problem of a UK banking system that is effectively impaired. Various schemes have been introduced to try and get lending to the corporate and now to the household sector, but these seem to skirt the issue of a banking sector that just to a large extent seems to be unwilling to lend because it is in a rather perilous state.